Good evening, BNI India. This is Max Srinivasan, the country head for BNI India, and I'd like to invite our founder, Dr. Ivan Misner, who will be talking about the 4 secrets to success in BNI. So it's over to you, Ivan, and we can start the recording.
Thank you very much, Mac. I appreciate the invitation, and it is fantastic to be speaking to all of you in India. I am so incredibly impressed with what you are doing throughout India. It really is amazing, and I'm so proud of the work that you have been doing there in generating business for one another throughout the local communities of India. I have an opportunity today to go through some content that I think will be really valuable for many of you. And first of all, I want to thank Mac for introducing me there, and I want to let all of you know that I'll be taking questions at the end of this webinar. So when we're all finished, I'm happy to take questions. I'm going to shut the video camera off for most of the content, and then when we go back to Q&A, I'll put the video camera back on. Okay, so here we go. Let's get started with the 4 secrets to success in BNI. Now, oftentimes, people will say to me, Ivan, what's the secret to success in BNI? What is the secret? So you ready? Here it is. I'm going to tell you the secret to success in BNI. The secret to success in BNI is that there is no one secret. There's no one secret. It's a formula. Just like any successful operation, it's a formula. There are a number of things that you have to do in order to build a powerful personal network. I'm going to talk about the 4 things that I think it takes to have an incredibly successful BNI membership and a successful BNI chapter. Here they are. First, embrace quality. Embrace quality. Second, add members. Third, seek engagement. And fourth, share stories. This is the formula for the secrets to success, a successful BNI chapter. So let's look at each one of these individually, one at a time, and talk about them. And again, remember, as I go, if you have questions, feel free to post your question, and I'm happy to answer it. It can be on any of the things that I'm talking about here today. It can be on another subject. It can be a personal question. It can be a business question. Whatever is on your mind is okay with me. The only dumb question is the unasked question. So let's begin with number 1. Embrace quality. Embrace quality. Quality is first on the list for a reason. The process begins by being very selective about who you bring into a chapter. You want quality business professionals who have a positive and supportive attitude. You'll always want people who are good at what they do. Effective networking is really dependent on the quality of the relationships that you actually develop in the group. If your network is a mile wide and an inch deep, you won't be getting the referrals that you expect. Therefore, it's important to build deep relationships with your referral partners if you want to generate more referrals. Now, in order to ensure quality participation, there has to be something very important, and that is accountability in the group. One of the strengths of a good network is that many of the members are friends. One of the weaknesses of a network is that many of the members are friends. Friends don't like to hold friends accountable. However, BNI is not a friendship organization. It's a referral organization. So in order to generate quality referrals, members have to hold their fellow members accountable for their participation in a group. If you expect the best from your fellow members, you'll get it. If you expect less than the best from your fellow members, you'll get it. Why accept mediocrity when excellence is an option. Accountability in a group will help you achieve excellence. Now, the last part of quality that is important to mention is understanding who you're bringing into your group or who you're inviting into your chapter. And there's a great concept that I've got that I've done a small BNI book on, but we're working on a public book on this topic of who's in your room. So if we're talking about quality, it's important to understand this concept of particularly quality of members, your fellow members. It's important to understand this concept of who's in your room. And let me describe it to you. Imagine that you live your life in one room. Imagine that you live your entire life in one room, and that one room has only one door. And that one door is an enter-only door, so that when people come into your life or into your room, they're there forever. Forever. You cannot get them out. Now, luckily, this is a metaphor. You can get people out of your life or out of your room, but I would argue with you that you may be able to get someone out of your life, but you can never get them out of your head. That is, you're going to make decisions for the rest of your life based on the experiences that you've had with other people. And so, first of all, getting them out of your room or out of your life is not easy, but the influence that they will continue to have because of the things that they did when you knew them will go on for the rest of your life. I love this concept because it fits BNI so incredibly well. Who is in your chapter? Who are you allowing in your chapter? And this is where the quality issue becomes extremely important in screening new members who come into the organization. So what does your room look like? Is it an angry room? Is it a loud room? Is it a room full of chaos? Is it a boring room? Is it a room with drama? I hate drama. I hate drama. And yet I used to let people into my life all the time that were full of drama. Just one issue after their entire life was a soap opera. And I did it to myself. And oftentimes it was because I thought this person was really good at what they did. So, all right, I can deal with the drama. But the repercussions of having to deal with the drama were far more significant than if I would have gone with somebody else who I maybe didn't have as much experience but had a whole lot less drama. Is it a weird room? Just strange. Is it a safe room? Is it a happy room? Is it a room with people who share your goals? Is it an exciting room? Is it a fun room? We seem to have a little lag on the PowerPoints, so I'm going slow here. Is it a successful room? Who's in your room? Are they angry? Are they loud? Are they chaotic? Are they busy? Are they full of drama? Or are they just plain weird? You want quality, accountability, and excellence. Here's the key. You're the architect of the room your life is played out in. You're the architect of your chapters. You're the architect of your chapters. You create, you design, you develop your own chapters. Be selective about the people that you bring into your room. Quality is the first, it's first for a reason. It's all about creating a positive quality chapter. When you focus on that, then it's easy to focus on the next topic, which is adding members. Adding members is the second of the key formula for building successful chapters. Years ago, I learned that there's a dramatic correlation between the size of a quality group and the number of referrals that are generated in that group. Groups under 20, I discovered, did not generate nearly as many referrals proportionately as groups over 30. Interestingly enough, the math proves it. It's a concept that I call the squared connection effect. The squared connection effect. If you have 16 people, you have 256 connections between those 16 people. 16 people, which by the way is obviously not a decent even core group these days. But 16 individuals have roughly 256 connections amongst themselves. Now, here's something that's interesting. 32 people have 1,024 connections. So when you go from 16 people with 256 connections to 32 people, you have 1,024 connections. The squared connection effect, this idea that when you double the size of a group, you quadruple the number of connections amongst them, is based on a well-known mathematical principle about telecommunication networks. It's called Metcalfe's law. And Metcalfe's law states that the value of a telecommunications network is proportional to the square of the number of connected users. So that when you have 16 people in your own personal network, you've only got 256 connections, but when you have 32, you have 1,024 connections. But let's take this even farther. There's a concept called the Dunbar number. And the Dunbar number is the number of meaningful relationships that one individual can have. So if you have a room of 32 people, and you have the Dunbar number is 150. And by the way, this is a number that was developed by a social scientist by the name of Dunbar. It's a number of meaningful relationships that you can have, that one individual can have. So the Dunbar number is 150. The squared connection effect shows that a group of 32 people can have 1,024 connections, which is the graph I showed before. If you apply the Dunbar number to it, that shows that these connections have a potential of 153,600 possible secondary connections. So let me recap this. A chapter of only 32 members. If you apply the Dunbar number, which is the number of meaningful relationships that those 32 people have, by the number of connections that those 32 people have with others, you have a possible set of connections of 153,000 people. So a room full of only 32 people have 153,000 connections sitting in that room. Now here's where it gets really amazing. If you have 64 people in one room, you have 4,096 direct connections. With the Dunbar number of 150, that's 614,000 people. 64 people in a room. When you look around, you have to realize that you have over 600,000 connections with those 64. Now, India has done amazing in creating some of the largest chapters in the world. The average chapter size in India is the highest in the world. So imagine that you're sitting in a room with 80 people. Those 80 people have the squared connection effect, 6,400 direct connections, times the Dunbar number. This is all the people that those people would know and the relationships they have with other people. There's almost 1 million connections, 960,000. So when you're in a room of only 80 people, you're really in a room of almost 1 million. Connections and secondary connections sitting in that room at one time. This is the power of a BNI group. It's not just the 80 people sitting in the room. It's the 80 people that they know, who know people, who know people, who know people. That's the power of a BNI chapter. The third of the secrets to success in BNI is to seek engagement. Seek engagement. Now, engagement involves a promise and an action. In order to achieve success in a group, the members have to promise to support one another and take the actions necessary to fulfill that promise. Now, there are many ways that members can be engaged in a group. They all begin with the group as a whole being immersed in a culture of learning. So this is one of the most important things, I think, for a successful chapter, is that the chapter has to be immersed in a culture of learning. Has everyone in your group listened to the BNI orientation audio material? Have they all gone? Have they all, every single one, gone to Member Success Program training? It's very important that chapters hold new members accountable for going to Member Success Program training. And if they don't, they need to be let go from the chapter. Everyone's got to get trained on how to run the BNI program. Do most of your members listen to the BNI podcast? Do they subscribe and regularly read SuccessNet? The higher the number of members engaged in these kinds of activities, the more likely the entire group will be in generating more business. Now, the reason for this is the shared vision of success and the shared implementation of that vision. Another way to be actively engaged in a group is to do regular and consistent one-to-ones. Meet with members outside your regular BNI meeting over and over again, over and over again. I see that members who do regular one-to-ones tend to both give and get more referrals. If you have an opportunity, go to bnisuccessnet.com, bnisuccessnet.com, click on From the Founder, and go to last month's article, not this month's article, but last month's article. Last month's article is more one-to-ones. The higher the one-to-ones, the higher the value. So people who did more to one-to-ones not only gave more referrals, but they received more referrals. It's really and it's based on a research study that was done in Italy on BNI. So go to bnisuccessnet.com, click on From the Founder, go to last month's article, and you'll see how one-to-ones there's a direct correlation between conducting one-to-ones and generating more business. Lastly, are you and your members doing really good introductions every week? The best introductions are ones that focus on breaking your business down to laser-specific elements of your business. You want to sharpshoot your talks, not shotgun them. Each week, talk about one key element, product, or benefit. Now, according to Psychology Today magazine in North America, research has found that people who are actively engaged in a business environment are 43% more productive than those who are not. So that means that if your fellow members are actively engaged in helping to maintain the quality and helping to bring in new members in education, in one-to-ones, that they are likely to be 43% more productive than the members who are just filling a spot. Furthermore, they state in Psychology Today that engagement includes regular dialogue, quality of working relationships, perceptions of the values of the organization, and recognition. Does any of this sound familiar to what is done in good BNI groups? It should. There's research behind our recommended action for engagement, and it's critical to the success of members in a group. Here are some of the kinds of things that you should take a good look at for engaging in a BNI chapter. The first is the official BNI podcast. I'll tell you that messages that are posted on the podcast, I read every message that gets posted on the official BNI podcast. So if you listen to a podcast and you have a comment, please feel free to leave a message. This is part of the engagement process. By the way, I have found on average there are more responses from BNI members in India to my content than on a per capita basis than any other country. So I commend India on its engagement in the educational material like BNI podcast. Like ivanmisner.com, I have a blog at ivanmisner.com, and on that blog we have lots and lots of content on networking, referral marketing, and a few other topics that I cover on the blog in addition to networking. And of course, I've talked about SuccessNet. SuccessNet is someplace that you should be going every month. If you're not getting emails, click on to SuccessNet and subscribe to SuccessNet so that you can be getting these emails. 3+1. The first is quality members. The second is adding new members. The third is engagement. But the fourth is as important as any of the ones we've talked about. And when I'm finished with this fourth item, I'm going to be opening it up for questions. So we'll have plenty of time, at least a half an hour for questions. The fourth of the 3+1 for success in BNI is to share stories. It really is about sharing your stories and other stories. When you are talking to a prospective referral for a fellow member, telling them stories about what you've heard about that member's performance and how good they are as a business professional and how they've helped other people. It's that story that gets somebody's interest. It's that story that gets them engaged in listening to you. It's that story that can help lead to the referral. When you come back and you give a testimonial about somebody's work, it's that story that helps excite other people to also want to refer that member. Great stories are an art. And so I'm going to give you a little formula for a great story. This is the formula for telling a good story. Okay, here it is. There are 4 things for telling a good story. A really good story is a fact. It's information wrapped in an emotion that compels someone to take action, that transforms them in some way. If you can tell stories that do this, take a fact, take basic information, wrap it in an emotion, excitement, humor, tugging on the heartstrings, awe, any kind of emotion. If you can wrap that in an emotion, it compels people to take action. And when they take action, it transforms them in some small or large way. This is what it takes, I believe, to tell great stories. So, 3+1, secrets to success in BNI. 1, embrace quality. Who's in your room? What people are you working with? What people do you want to work with? Sometimes people ask me, what do you look for in a great member? And I used to have a different answer than I do now. I used to say, well, the length of time in business, the educational background they have, these kinds of things. Today, the top 3 characteristics for me, are attitude, number 2, attitude, and number 3, attitude. Attitude, attitude, attitude. It is so important to bring in people who have a positive and supportive attitude, who believe in the philosophy of giver's gain. Clearly, you want business people who are good at what they do. That's a given. But what's not a given is bringing in people with a positive attitude. Sometimes business people, sometimes people in general, complain as though it were an Olympic event. It's not. It's not an Olympic event. It is very important that the people you bring in show their interest in helping other people and show that they're positive and supportive. And that's one of the reasons why you should be, as much as possible, bringing in people you know, not strangers. Because when you bring in a stranger, you really don't know what you're going to get. Okay. I have covered, well, actually, I didn't finish these last two. Let me back up here. Adding members. So embracing quality, adding members. Got to, even, some people say, well, I've got 80 members in the chapter. I can't possibly add more. So one of the things that we've found is that in studies that we've done in BNI, chapters can lose as many as 20% of their membership in 1 year for reasons that the chapter can't control. Well, what would those be? Health. They move. They retire. They have some personal issues that have nothing to do with business or nothing to do with BNI. You can lose as many as 20 members in a year. So if you have an 80-member chapter, you can lose 16 members theoretically in 1 year for reasons the chapter has no control on. It could be the best chapter in the world. So yes, adding members constantly has to be one of the items in order to maintain the membership of a chapter. Seeking engagement, we talked about. You got to immerse yourself in the educational content, get face-to-face with people, meet with people in one-to-ones, and you do it all in sharing stories. Okay, so now I'm ready to open it up for any questions. Mac, if you've got some questions, or Raleigh, if you have some questions, I'm happy to take them.
Sure. Ivan, we have a few questions that's coming up on the chat box. A couple of them are related to adding members to the chapter. One of the questions from Ritika says that there's always a difference between the perception and the goals. Sometimes the applicant is not having the right attitude and should not be allowed to join, but other members allow that particular person to join just because they want to add the head count. And there's another question from Arun Rao, which is related. Doesn't the traffic lights encourage members addition without looking at quality? So if you can address about the quality issue, that'd be great.
Well, give me one question at a time, Mac. I'm a pretty linear thinker, so what's the one question you have?
Sure. The question is about adding members.
Yeah.
Without really adding members for the pressure of adding a head count to the chapter rather than looking at the quality.
Okay. Really, really, really bad idea. If all you want are warm bodies, you're going to have warm bodies in the room, but not quality. You want to bring in quality people. Now, but here's the thing: it's not either or. It's only the numbers and nothing else, or it's only quality and nothing else. Look, if you're sitting in a room with 25 quality people, you're not going to be generating as much business as you could if you're sitting in a room with 45 quality people or 65 quality people. And so it truly is a formula. One by itself is not enough. It takes the two. So you have to have quality and quantity. But one of the worst things you could do is just bring people in to add to the head count. I mean, think about it. I want you to all just think for a moment. Think about a time where you worked somewhere and there was an employee or two who just didn't fit in well. You know what I mean? They didn't fit in well. They were not very friendly. They created chaos. They had drama. like I was talking about before. And think about, I want you to have that in your mind. Now, think about any of those who either quit or got fired. So you had this employee who was in the company, they were creating chaos, they quit or they got fired. Think about how you felt when they left. I don't know about you, but I've had people like that who worked at companies I've been in. And I remember thinking when they left, oh, thank goodness. Thank goodness. This place is going to be so much better now that that person is gone. Don't bring in people like that. Don't bring in people that are just a warm body. And if you do, it's okay to help them leave, to help them walk out. One of the things we put in the policies of BNI is that you have to have a positive and supportive attitude. And so when you have somebody who does nothing but whine and complain, it's really important that the membership committee sit down with them and say, look, one of our core values is for members to have a positive and supportive attitude, and we're not seeing that with you. How can we help you? This is the key. How can we help you turn that around? So your membership committee is really important in helping to maintain the quality and to helping screen new people. It's also important that you understand, don't just bring in warm bodies, bring in quality potential members. Mac, did that answer the question?
Yes, Ivan, it did. There's another question from Ananda Reddy. He says, Ivan, you talk about the person's attitude. How do you judge a person's attitude?
Well, first of all, again, I highly recommend that you bring in people that you know. Don't bring in strangers. You bring in strangers, anybody can fake it for a few weeks. So bring in people that you know. But there are a number of ways that you can determine attitude in talking to people. Certainly the way they sit, the way they respond, the way they talk to you. When you start asking questions about their background, one of the things that I say is don't beg people to come to BNI. You want to basically do an interview. We're interviewing for whatever your position is. We're interviewing. I think you might make a good candidate. And then when they come to the meeting, interview them afterwards. Sit down and go through their application and say, tell me a little bit about your background and what did you like most about what you did? What don't you like about what you do? What do you hope that we can bring to you? And what do you believe that you can bring to us as an organization? What do you think about this kind of networking? How do you believe you'll be able to interact effectively with these people? Get some feedback, get some information. Look, the truth is you can do a government security check on somebody and still not know if they're honest and if they're, have a positive attitude. You can't know for sure. That's why knowing people in advance before you invite them helps. So this is why the membership committee is so important. If you do bring in someone that really is not a good fit, that's when you sit down and have the conversation with them. And by the way, sometimes you have good members who go bad. Sometimes members have things go on in their life, and at one point they were a great member, but it's just no longer a good fit for them now. And the membership committee and the quality of the membership committee is so important in helping to screen new members. We're having a gazillion questions I see come, and I want to make sure and answer as many as I can. If you've got a follow-up question to this question, we're probably going to pass on it, but let's see if we can cover as many topics as possible here. Mac.
Yeah. Manoj has been asking, the membership committee changes every 6 months. So how do you maintain the continuity of imposing culture and systems?
Well, it can. Mac, are you doing automatic renewals on the leadership teams with your approval?
The leadership teams don't get automatically renewed. They have to they have to be sure the executive director has to approve it.
Yes, but are many of them being automatically renewed, or is it a whole new process every 6 months?
No, they all normally change every 6 months. Every 6 months they get changed. The leadership team changes.
Okay, so let's talk about that, Mac, because over the years we have transitioned a little bit where the leadership teams have the opportunity to renew for another 6 months with the director's approval. So it is a 6-month thing, but oftentimes for continuity, they will renew, and the membership committees can renew as well. But it has to be with director approval. So we have in BNI what's called a short-term institutional memory, that in a 6-month to 1 year period, you have a transition of most, if not all, of the leadership teams. And so that transition takes place every 6 months to a year. It's very important, I think, that you keep some of the people who were on the membership committee before on the membership committee going forward, so that there is that continuity. As a matter of fact, one of the things I recommend is that when a leadership team steps down, see if at least one of them will then go to the membership committee, so that you're rotating people in and out, and so you don't have this complete turnover of all new leaders every 6 months. The complete turnover, there's a balance. The complete turnover creates a lot of problems in institutional memory. Keeping everyone for a year or even longer burns them out. And so it's important to kind of transition over time. And Mac, offline, let's talk more about the 6 month versus a year, and I can explain how that's worked with most countries.
Sure. Ivan, there's another question. As India's chapter size increases, the categories seems to be super sliced. They're starting to get finer tuned. So is that a good practice? Because now they're seeing 2 to 3 people of the same profession in the chapter, but they're only able to serve only one piece of their business.
Yeah, listen, I think absolutely, and I say that as a member, I was a business consultant. When I started BNI, I was a management consultant. And there were many other management consultants that I actually had a collaborative relationship with. You know, my background was not in finance. And so if I had a management consultant whose background was in finance, it actually was a benefit to have them in my chapter with me. If my background wasn't either in advertising, so if I had a management consultant whose background was in print media, radio media, advertising, that actually would have been a benefit to me. So if you can find people that are collaborative with you, it actually generates more business for you. And let me give you an example of what I mean. I was in Manhattan a few years ago, and it was at a mixer for a lot of different chapters, and I met a member, and the member said he was an attorney. And I said, oh, fantastic, there are a lot of attorneys that are in BNI, certainly in New York. And he said, oh yeah, we have 7 in our chapter. I said, 7? You have 7 attorneys in your chapter? He said, yeah, 7. I said, look, I've seen chapters that have 2, 3, but 7? How could that possibly work? That's too many. He said, no, are you kidding? It's fantastic. I said, okay, you got to explain this to me, because that's a lot of attorneys. He said, look, almost all of us, we want to specialize. You know, he said, I do contracts, business contracts. That's what my specialty is, he said. But we've got a family law, we've got an estate law, we have real estate law, property law. And so we've got all of these different attorneys. I don't really want to do that stuff. I can do it. I'm qualified to do much of it, but I don't want it. I love business contracts. This is my sweet spot. This is what I'm really good at. And so what I do is whenever I get a referral for one of those others, I refer them to one of them, because that's what they love. That's their passion. So when they get a referral for business contracts, they always refer it to me. So he said the secret here is to make sure to bring in people who promise, who absolutely commit to passing those kinds of referrals to you, and you do the same for them. Then what happens is you're doing what you're passionate about, what you're excited about. If you are in business and you just take anything you can get, then you're constantly doing stuff you don't like and not even necessarily really good at. Instead, focus on what you're passionate about, focus on what you're good at, bring in people who will collaborate with you so that you can actually generate more business. I'll leave you with this one last thing he said. He said, the 7 of us And by the way, I met 4 of the 7 that night. He had a total of 4 were there, and he brought the other 3 over. He said, on a per capita basis, we get more referrals from the 7 of us than we do from any one other member of the chapter on a per capita basis. So these 7 people give us, each other, more referrals per capita than anyone else in the chapter. So in fact, Mac, if you're smart about the way you bring in collaborative, similar professions, you'll increase your business, not reduce it.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Ivan. Yeah. There's another question from Yogita, and the question is, how should a chapter deal with members who were earlier quality members but are now have settled in a comfort zone and are no longer participating fully in the chapter?
Yeah, listen, it's really important, I think, to sit down with those people and to have a conversation with them. And generally, it'll show up in the the numbers on the Palms report, or the records as for their participation in the program. So what you want to do is you want to sit down with them and you want to say, look, here's the numbers, here's where you're at, and ask what I call the 4 magic words of customer service. How can we help? It's five magic words of customer service. How can we help you? Okay. How can we help you? Now, this is much better than going to the person and saying, hey, look, you used to be really strong. You're not participating anymore. You need to improve, or we're going to open your classification to someone else. That's a bad way to do it. Listen, I'm all about accountability. You saw I put a slide up on the screen saying accountability is key. But you can follow the policies without being a fascist. You don't have to be a fascist to follow the program. So do it from a position of caring about the person. And you do that by showing them the numbers and then saying, how can we help you improve this? How can we help you bring in more visitors or bring in more referrals or whatever? And listen to their answer. Now, what I'm about to tell you is gold. It's absolute gold. Listen to their answer, because their answer will always be one of 2 things. Their answer will always be one of 2 things. They're either going to give you a can't do answer or a won't do answer. A can't do answer will be, I'm really struggling with this right now because I remember I asked this once to one person. He said, because I'm new in business and I'm having difficulty meeting new people. I'm just here at the office all the time, and it's difficult to get out. I'm really struggling with it. I'm open to ideas. Well, that's a can't do. Well, we were all can't do's at one point. We had to learn how to do it. A won't do will say something more like, well, it's very difficult in my business to be able to give referrals to other people. Now, your description there was, what if they've been a member for a long time and they're just tired, and they give you, you ask them, how can we help you improve this? And they give you basically a won't do answer. There's not much business I can bring into this group, or I'm just not as excited as I was, whatever their answers are. Here's how you help them decide to leave. And it really works very well. If you say to them, look, you either have to start participating or we're going to kick you out, then they'll die on the hill fighting you because you just basically threatened them. Instead, what you want to do is you want to say, I understand it's not, for you, it's not doing what you were looking for in the past, and so it's maybe not a good fit anymore. It's okay to step down from the chapter. And maybe someday later, when you feel it's a better fit, to come on back in. But if you don't think it's a good fit right now, it's okay. Step on down and leave on good terms, and maybe you can come back sometime. Now, you may be thinking, we'll never bring you back. You ended up being a deadbeat. We'll never bring you back. Don't tell them that. Mm-hmm. But, it's very important that people save face. So if they're not producing and they don't want to produce, then open the door for them to leave and let them save face. Hope that answers the question.
Yes, thanks, Ivan. There's another question from Lena in Bangalore. In large chapters, in really large chapters where the activities can get overwhelming, both for the members and LT. And the quality of bonding comes down because there are subgroups. And if you're not connected as being part of that particular group, your credibility or you're going down the trust curve. So how do you manage this in large chapters that you're able to bond with all the members?
Doing the one-to-ones are really important. Also, I think power teams are really important. The one-to-ones in large chapters are more important than ever. And I know that there's a real excitement in being the largest chapter in the world. You know, being the largest chapter in the world is exciting. That really is. I think the only thing better is to being the most successful chapter in the world. And you can see by the formula that I showed you that the number is only part of the formula. And so I have seen chapters of 80 members, of 70 members, generating as much or more business than chapters even larger. And so the quality is so incredibly important. You've got to focus on the quality of membership. I'm not sure I hit that question. You want to give it to me one more time, Mac? Because I think I may have sidetracked a little.
Sure. In the large chapters, it gets overwhelming for the members and the LT.
Right.
And,
so how do you connect?
And then there's groupism. Yeah, and they're starting to have groups, subgroups. And then if you don't participate in one activity, you're considered not being a participant. No?
Yeah, well, look, you can't participate in everything, but I think if you're out there doing, you've got to engage. It doesn't mean you have to do every single thing that the chapter is doing, especially when you get into a large chapter. But if you are there to give and to support and to help others, it shows. And if you can't make one side meeting that's going on, not a BNI chapter meeting, but something else going on, you can't make it. Business people have business to do. So go to the things you can. But I would highly recommend one-to-ones as a way of meeting as many people as possible and actively participating in group in dance card. In power teams. Here's another thing. Large chapters sometimes. The power teams will invite one person from another power team in the chapter to their power team meeting. Now, so if you're in a power team, you can go to another power team and say, hey, we would love to have someone from your power team come to our meeting. See, and what I'm talking about is many power teams. Do you do this at all, Mac, in India? Many power teams will hold meetings outside a BNI meeting. Do you do that in India at all?
Yes. The power team meeting is always outside the BNI meeting.
Good. So outside that meeting, another power team meeting, invite a person from another power team to come sit and meet this power team and see how they operate. It's a great way of cross-pollination, sharing and supporting one another, and it's a great way to get to know a lot of the people. So if you're in one power team, go visit a few other power teams if they're okay with that, and you should just build that relationship. Just remember this. This process is a marathon, not a sprint. This is a marathon, not a sprint. You don't have to meet everyone overnight. It's not that kind of race. This is long distance. Networking is more about farming than it is about hunting. Just one step at a time, consistently over a long period of time will generate a whole lot more business than you trying to do the 100-yard dash. Okay?
Thanks, Ivan. There's another question from Sandeepan Reddy, and he's asking us to elaborate more on the third point you talked about, seeking engagement.
Yeah.
In your slide.
So one of the questions that were asked was about what do you do with people that used to be very engaged and they're now kind of apathetic. This is what I'm talking about, is that you want a room full of people who are highly engaged in the process. Again, when you're at in a work environment and there's a lot of people working around, here's a better example, at least for me. School. My teachers, when I was in high school, when I was a teenager, there were some teachers that were fully engaged. They were fantastic teachers. They changed my life in so many ways. And then There were the others. You know, they were there just kind of like, okay, open up your books. Today we're going to do chapter 3. And they didn't care. And it showed. It showed in the way they taught. It showed in the impact that they made on others. And so when I'm talking about engagement, I'm talking about immersion in the program with understanding that it's a marathon, not a sprint. And so when you start to see people disengage and not be interested and not be supportive, then it's really important to bring them back in or to open the door and allow them out or help them out. But engagement means doing one-to-ones, going to power team meetings. It means really immersing in the education, reading the material, listening to the podcasts. These are the kinds of things that are all part of engagement for a successful chapter, which, by the way, I think India has been more successful than most countries. Your average number of members per chapter is higher than virtually every country in the world. And I think one of the reasons for that is that Indian members tend to be more involved in our podcasts and blogs and SuccessNet than any other country in the world. Okay, Mac?
Yeah, thanks, Ivan. Ivan, there's another question from Jatin that says, do you think one-to-ones between two chapters can help improve business, or one-to-ones between two power teams of two different chapters will improve business?
It
Can you
can.
recommend those?
Yeah, absolutely. But I would first focus on your existing chapter. Remember, the grass isn't greener on the other side. The grass is greener where you water it. You know that? Do you have that expression in India? The grass isn't greener on the other side.
Yeah, we have heard that. Yeah.
Yeah, so the grass isn't greener on the other side. The grass is greener where you water it. So on one hand, we're hearing people in these questions say, I got a big chapter. How can I build relationships with my own chapter members? And then on the other hand, you have someone saying, oh, I want to build relationships in another chapter. So there's a balance. You know, build the relationships in your existing chapter. Build tight, deep relationships in your existing chapter. Then doing these other things like one-to-ones with members of another chapter or another power team in another chapter, they're good. There's nothing wrong with it. I can't say it's a bad idea. But first, make sure that you really have gone deep with the relationships in your existing chapter. Now, I mean deep. You know, I talk about VCP. I think most of your members know what VCP is. It stands for visibility, credibility, profitability. You first have to be visible, then you establish credibility, and only then do you get to profitability. So I've said this earlier, if your network is a mile wide and an inch deep, it'll never be very successful. In places it has to be deep. So when I talk to some chapters, I'll say, do you have really deep relationships? Do you really have a deep relationship with most of the members in this chapter? And they're like, oh yeah, I know these people. And so then I'll ask them a series of questions. I'll say, look to your left and look to your right. There's two people, left and right. Do you know whether they have a significant other or not? Are they in a relationship? Do you know if they have any children? Do you know where their office is located? Have you ever been to their office? Have you used their products or services? Do you know most of their complete line of their products and services that they have to offer? Do you know what their personal goals are? Do you know what their professional goals are? I said, is there anyone in this room that looked to their left and looked to their right and knew the answer to every one of those questions? I asked them to raise their hands. Mac, do you know how many people raised their hands?
How many?
None.
Wow.
Not one. So when I say build relationships, these are the kinds of things I'm talking about. You want to get to know these people well, not superficially, but you want to go deep and get to know these people as well as you can, because the deeper you go in understanding and knowing them, the easier it is to remember them and want to help them. And so, yes, you can do this with other groups, but first do a deep dive in your own chapter and make sure you understand how you can refer them. Okay?
Okay, thanks, Ivan. There's another question about, do you encourage having an aptitude test for an incoming member so that the quality can be assured? Have you tried it? Or
No, I haven't. So let me tell you a secret. I don't think I've ever told anybody this publicly. When I was in high school and applied to college, of course, I had to do a standardized test to be accepted to college. And I did pretty well on the standardized test. Then I went to graduate school. I went to the master's degree. Now, in high school, I don't know if this, do you know what a GPA is? Do you use the term GPA in India?
Not all schools. The grade point average here is more like the first class, second class, and third class.
So an A average is a 4.0, a B average is a 3.0, a C average is a 2.0, and a D average is a you should go home. But so in high school, I had a 3.0. Now, I've never told anybody this. This is the first time I've ever shared this. In high school, I had a 3.0, which is about a B average. And I had a standardized test score that was higher than that showed that I was actually probably sharper than that. Now, here's what's interesting. In college, I had a 3.6 GPA, which is like a B plus GPA. Took the standardized test to get into graduate school. My standardized test score was lower. My GPA went up. My standardized test score went down. When I was in graduate school for my master's degree, I graduated with a 4.0 GPA, straight A's. Took the standardized test to go to doctoral degree, PhD. I had a 4.0 GPA. My standardized test score went down. So as my GPA went up, my standardized test scores actually went down. I was first, and I've never told this to an audience before, I was turned down for the PhD program at USC. When I went back and I literally did a graph showing standardized test scores and GPA, showing that as my standardized test scores dropped, my GPA went up. And that two-page analysis, the graph and a one-page statement, was enough for them to accept me for the doctoral program at USC. I tell you this story because standardized tests are not necessarily an indicator of success. We've never seriously considered doing them. The process of doing it would be massive. But that's not why we didn't do it. I don't think it's a clear indicator of whether somebody's going to be successful or not. That's my opinion. Do we have time we got time for at least one more? Yeah. And actually, I'm happy to go a little longer if you need to, Mac.
Okay. We have so many questions. Maybe we may do one or two more.
Yeah.
There's a question asking, which even I get normally asked when I go around the country. Is there an ideal chapter size? Is there anything that you consider as an ideal chapter size? I get this constantly asked.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you where the sweet spot begins with a chapter. The sweet spot begins. Wait a minute. The sweet spot begins with about 50 members. So that chapters don't reach their optimum until they're at least 50 members. So chapters of under 50 members they're just not generating the kind of referrals that they should be. So to me, that's sort of the sweet spot of where chapters should be. Now, as chapters go up to 60, 70, 80, they're going to be generating even more referrals. I think that you're not going to necessarily be generating exponentially more. And so I really, and I want you to hear this properly, I don't think your goal should be to create chapters of 110, 120. I really don't. I think that India is doing it right. Your average is 50. That's way higher than the international average. The international average is about 26. That's too low. So your average is about 50. You are where you should be. You have some chapters at 100. You have some chapters at 80 or 90. But the optimum really begins at 50. That's where the sweet spot starts. Does that answer your question, Mac?
Yes, that answers it. Thanks, Ivan. There's another question here which says, with so many chapters in a region, is comparing or highlighting one another a good motivation for success, or is it better ways to motivate chapters for success?
Look, I think meaningful recognition is always valuable. You know, when a chapter is doing a great job, recognizing that chapter is good for the chapter, but it's also good if it's done right for other chapters. For example, if you say, here, chapter X has been amazing at doing this, whatever this is. They have the best, weekly presentations, or they have the best Visitors Day program, or, to be specific. And it's particularly valuable if you can say, other chapters in the community, in the area, in the region, if you want to see how to do this really well, set up a meeting to go visit the chapter and you can see how to do this. And then pick another chapter for something else and another chapter for something else. I'm a real believer that you catch chapters doing something right. Not wrong, but right. And when you catch them doing something right, you recognize that to a lot of people. So the short answer is yes, I think it is good. But it's good if you're very specific about what it is they're doing and that you use it as a learning opportunity for other chapters to come visit and to support one another. Look, Giver's Gain is about helping each other. And it's about recognizing and supporting one another. And so if the comparison is done in that way, it's done in a healthy way. If it's done in a way of, this chapter is doing this, they're so much better than you, that's not the right way to do it. But if it's done as, this chapter is doing this element really well, you should go see it. And your chapter is doing this incredibly well, they should go see you. I think that's a real positive thing to do. What else?
Yeah. Thanks, Ivan. One last question is the member here is asking, can you elaborate on the Dunbar number that you shared earlier?
Yeah, look it up on Google, the Dunbar number. The Dunbar number was developed by a social scientist, and his last name was Dunbar, and he wanted to know what is the number of people that someone can have a meaningful relationship with. And through a lot of analysis and research, he came up with approximately 150. Now, he said, look, some people are different. Some people it's 200, some people it's 100, some people it's 10, some people it's 300. So it varies from person to person, but the average number was approximately 150. So there were roughly 150 people. Ironically, I'm trying to remember, I was never in the military, but there 150 is, I think, the same size as a company in the military, which is interesting because a company was created to be a unit in the military where everyone would know one another, so that there were relationships with all 150, that everybody knew each other's name. So the Dunbar number ironically matches what the military has, what most militaries have as a company. And the value in that is having a sense, for us in particular, the value in that is having a sense that when you're in a room with 50 people, you're in a room with way more than 50 people, because you've got all these connections to all of these different people, plus all of the people that they know. You've got tens of thousands of people. So the next time you're in that BNI room and you see 50 or 100 people, there's not 100 people there. There's 1 million people there because of the connections through that math of the squared connection effect and the Dunbar number. Okay, does that answer? I know there's so many other questions, and
yes, I know we have a lot more, but I think we have covered the time for today.
Okay,
we're running a little over today, so. And
I'm happy to answer other questions that you have. We're going to do this again. Do we have the date set for the next one, Mac?
Yes, Ivan. Yes, we do.
Okay, and
we will be sending out the details for that.
We will send that out, and what a great turnout, you guys. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people came, and I understand that many of you are watching this as a group, that's fantastic. If so, I want you to take a photograph and I want you to post it on Facebook, and I want you to send it to Mac, and we'll post it on Facebook. Anyone who's watching this via a group of BNI members. Look, let me leave you with this, Mac, and you can close it up then. I am so proud of India. I think you are doing an amazing job there. Keep your eye, there's an expression in the US, you may have it in India as well, keep your eye on the ball. Focus on the things that we've been talking about here today. If you apply this formula in your chapter and you do it in a loving and caring way, you are there to help support one another. I promise you, India can continue to be one of the most successful chapters of BNI in the world. I truly believe that India is going to become the #2 chapter in membership just within the next 5 to 10 years. That you're going to catch up to every country, and you will probably end up beating the United States for membership at some point, because you have so many people who are highly engaged and you have this emerging market. I have big dreams for India, and again, look forward to doing the next webinar and to visiting India again sometime in the not too distant future. Thanks, Mac. Over to you.
Thanks, Ivan, for taking the time out for doing this webinar for us. It's been really useful, and we're getting a lot of positive feedback from the members across India. So thanks for taking the time out, and look forward to having you again next month.
Great.
Thanks, everyone.
Hey, thanks, everyone. And I'm going to put this up on Facebook. If you were on this webinar, please put a comment on the posting on Facebook. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.